Timo and most of my dwellers return home, and my enclaves erupt in celebration. They mourn the lost and celebrate the hard-earned victory, giving me not only a bit more mana as their prayers used to, but also giving me a bit more of that divine energy I still didn't have a good term for. I also don't have much idea how to use it, either, but giving little slivers to Aranya and the other priests and priestesses seems to work pretty well. I'll need to experiment with the stuff later because I have dungeon things to be doing. Timo touches base with Hullbreak first, and as expected, he refuses any deal more generous than what the stag got. I suggest taking an expansion from the alley pool, which he's amenable to. He's going to take a couple days to look at his options, both for the expansion and for upgrading what he already has. Fishing is definitely going to pick up with winter finally pushed back by spring, so upgrading his fish spawner could be a great investment. He's also considering upgrading his clam nodes for pearls and his corals. I do my best not to be a backseat dungeon and let him make his own decisions, though I do encourage him to invest in what he already has before working on an expansion. I think he's feeling a lot more confident in taking risks and encouraging delvers now. He doesn't have to face things alone, and his merfolk have been flourishing ever since I had to force him to loosen his grip on them. Violet, however, seems to be a bit more obstinate. Timo talks with Onyx inside a secret sanctuary in the ceiling, which is looking much more refined than the last time I saw it. Back when she was just a little chip of a core, she was huddled in a shortcut in the ceiling. But now, the shortcut has faded and she has a proper sanctum dug out, probably thanks to legs and nose, if I had to guess. Her little square cut amethyst of a core is also not so little anymore. She's gone from a chip to about the size of a dinner plate. Onyx could probably move her around if she needs to, but honestly, her secret sanctum in the ceiling has plenty of room for expansion. Anyway, interior design appreciation aside, both Onyx and Violet are being stubborn. Timo's resisting the urge to pinch the bridge of his nose as he tries to get through the two of them. No, the college fund doesn't count. That's yours already, not a normal part of the alley pool. You got it from the Sci-Fi hatching, and the boss shifted it there for safekeeping so you wouldn't feel bloated from it. You get that, twice what you contributed to Murphy's Law on some other large purchase, probably either an expansion or a voice. I can feel Violet's opinion that's not fair through the bond, and I imagine Onyx is trying to argue the same. Timo doesn't bother translating most of what they're saying, but he does give them a curious look as they continue to argue. So she does have her eye on an expansion. Where's she want to go? Onyx covers her mouth with her claws like she accidentally said something she shouldn't, and I can feel a bit of guilt from Violet. No need to act like that, you two. I told you, the college fund is already yours. You don't need to feel guilty about spending it and also getting something else on top. You earned them both. Boss isn't just spoiling you, Orc. So go on, where does Violet want to expand? The direction is so simple I don't even need Timo to translate what I feel from the bond, though there are other potential problems with it. Up? Are you sure? Fordok isn't all that far away, and if you expand up, you might cause even more of a quake than the boss did when he expanded down. Onyx shakes her head, and this time I will need Timo to translate, as I just get a chaotic mix of dim images and concepts. Timo listens attentively, even as I feel growing concern from my favorite rat. He sighs when they finish, then speaks. So, apparently No's got a title while we were busy with the mall. Explorer. It's similar to a marshal, but involves going out on an expedition a lot yourself too. He's been spreading Cappy's spores around, and the two have been getting a lot of information. No's found what he says are some wet tunnels underneath Fordok. He's also been listening in at the Adventurers Guild, and heard talk about sewer dungeons. The worst dungeon in any game. Timo tries to suppress a laugh at that. Don't let Violet hear you say that. Besides, sewer dungeons seem to work a lot differently to what you're thinking. They don't usually have encounters for starters. Adventurers might be willing to go to all sorts of unpleasant places, but even the most curious ones are going to balk at traipsing through a sewer. Then why were the adventurers talking about it? Timo shrugs. Apparently sewer dungeons are really common, and it's kind of weird that Fordok doesn't have one. Neverest probably ate them when they'd show up before anyone could discover them. Anyway, Violet's affinity should make her a perfect fit, even if I didn't want to think about it very hard. I still remember you talking about treatment plants, blur. Her affinity. How does her affinity of? What's her affinity? Timo can't suppress his laugh this time, even as I feel a bit of nervousness from Violet. He calms down pretty quickly and smiles at her call. Nah, he's not going to be upset about it. I never realized he didn't know. Doesn't it say in her information or something? Well, probably, it just never seemed important, and a bit of a violation of her privacy to look. Timo laughs again and shakes his head. See, Violet, affinity isn't important to him. He just wants to help you out. And, not to be mean, but you didn't really have any chances to capitalize on your particular affinity until now anyway. She's decay affinity, boss. I take a few seconds to chew on that and make sure to pat the bond with encouragement when I feel her nervousness again. Decay is important to clean things up, ironically. I probably should have guessed with the mushroom and centipede spawners. So, she wants to become the sewers for Fordok? How does that work? Timo shrugs. She was hoping you'd know. She should probably hold off on that for now, then. We wouldn't want to make another earthquake for Fordok right now. Timo repeats my suggestion, only to get a shake of Onyx's head and an explanation I can't hear. Really, that might work. Onyx says Nose has dug into the sewers and is working on widening his little tunnel to be a proper access path for an expansion. Violet can't quite feel the details for the expansion yet, but just like how you get details and a discount for sending expeditions, so does she. Once she gets a better idea of it, she wants to take the expansion. That sounds fine to me. I'll get Coda and maybe Slash to help out with the access tunnel, and maybe you can go chat with Tedda about how this works. Oh, and does Violet have access to assigning a voice yet? Can you make a voice yet, Violet? Timo listens for a moment before nodding. It sounds like, but she doesn't know who to designate. It's a pretty big decision. I remember needing a bit of time to decide too. Just tell her to think about it, and remind her she doesn't even need to do it before expanding. Timo nods. No rush on designating one, Violet. You might even decide to make a new scion after your expansion and have them be your voice. Boss is gonna send Coda to come check Nose's path and maybe have Slash help too, if it's needed. I'm gonna see if Tedda has any advice on you taking over the sewers unless you need anything else. Onyx shakes her head, and I feel Violet already deep in thought, probably about who to make her voice. I pat the bond with more encouragement, feeling like a dad tussling his daughter's hair as she focuses on her homework. Timo heads for the surface and soon pops atop a bookshelf in the Office of Dungeon Affairs, or as it's actually known, the Dungeoneers Guild. It looks like she and Badul are already deep in paperwork for all the happenings with the mall, so it's the perfect time to shovel even more work onto the two. Hey Teller, I hope you're not too busy. The elven woman sighs and looks up to Timo. I am, thanks to you, and I get the feeling I'm about to get busier. For all her grumpy demeanor, there's still a brightness to her eyes, like she's never happier than when she has a dozen forms to update, collate, and file. Timo smirks, probably not too much more busy. The boss wants to know about sewer dungeons. Violet wants to expand up and take them over. Is there anything we should be careful about with that? Badul looks up from his own papers with interest as Tella sheathes her quill in her inkpot. Dungeons are one of the few types I'm familiar with, since they're more administrative than adventurous. I believe Fordok's sewer system is a bit outdated compared to some, but they should still be perfectly suitable for her to expand into. She'll need proper access before expanding, or else she may take over the town proper, or cause an even worse quake than Bedtime with his downward expansion. Timo nods at that, so she continues. As for how they work, it's rather simple. The sewers are designed to allow easy access by the townsfolk, either via places to dump chamber pots or proper restroom facilities. A sewer dungeon will take the contributions and deal with them in its own way. Some will turn the waste fully to mana for the dungeon, others will break it down before allowing the nutrients to wash out downstream or to the ocean, as would be the case here. I've even heard of one that uses the processed waste to enhance herbalism nodes in its territory. And there's no problem with the local authorities about a dungeon taking over the sewers. Tella smiles and shakes her head. Of course not. Most cities actively try to encourage sewer dungeons to spawn with their sewer design. A large enclosed space close to active mana use is an excellent way to get a dungeon to spawn, even if the specific mechanics are still debated. She smirks over towards Badul. Though now there's a few eyewitnesses to grill for details, even if it's likely the situation was unusual. She shakes her head and focuses back on Timo. Regardless, there will be no issue with her expanding to the sewers. In fact, the Lord Mayor will be actively incentivized to keep her happy and safe as the sewer. Whatever method she chooses to deal with the waste, it will help prevent disease and keep the harbor and docks clean. Cool. Boss has Coda helping with an access path. Violet found the sewers on her own and even heard about sewer dungeons from listening in on the Adventurers Guild. Once she has a path, she'll probably expand up that way then. Oh, she also will probably get a voice sometime soon too. Boss is sharing the wealth after the mess with the mall. Teller nods and glances at the shelf of the scrolls on the active dungeons in the area. I'll keep that in mind. If there's nothing else, please have a good day. Burgle and I need to compile the information on the mall and its unusual spawner, Peanut Tal's request for a new guild branch in Silvervein, and start the file for the new dungeon there too. Timo whistles at that. Don't let me keep you then. And don't work Burgle too hard either. Tal's gonna need him back once he returns. Teller simply smiles. He's a good worker, and thanks to his affinity, he's the perfect assistant for copying forms. Burgle snorts from his desk, and Timo looks to see several others laid out around him, parchment secured as metal quills hover over them. It's not too bad when they're all the same thing. I never thought I'd be able to use my affinity for something like this. It's difficult to tell if he has a newfound respect for what goes into administrative work or disdain. I'd wait